we got Bruce in the position. Sorry.
Yeah. I was leaning over trying to like get Facebook. I don't know how that works. It's not supported, but it's all right. We're not going to use it.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, you know, if you're not having a show, if we don't have a technical issue. So.
Yes. Oh, I've seen Rick Beato get frustrated with all sorts of issues when he's trying to stream.
Oh yeah. I'm going to put our chat up on here just so we have that for later. People pop in at some point.
Mm-hmm.
All right, sir. Well, how you doing? It's rainy and chilly here in Wisconsin, but you know, it's kind of a nice day to have a coffee and talk drum shop.
Yeah, man. We are starting to warm up. We've had a schizophrenic spring, kind of more on the cooler side for LA. But today we're slated to get up to the upper 70s. And I think those days are going to be the next several days, which is nice because I have a tool shed. The tool shed has a leak that we just found out. And there's Jake Slichter. Hi, Jake.
Hey, Jacob. Awesome.
So we were getting our bikes out last weekend, no problem. And then on Tuesday, my wife went in there and she said, it's wet. And so there must be some kind of a sprinkler break or something. So
I don't know. Spring always brings interesting things, even in your world, I'm sure. Like,
yes,
the weather doesn't love anything.
Always something to manage, man. And then, you know, you get the classic, like you tell somebody about it, they go, hey, well, you know, you own a home, you got all that stuff. So.
Thanks. It's like talking to your dad. You know, you're going home, it's going to happen. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, what do you think? Well, Jacob's in the house. We got some eyeballs. Let's talking drums. What's on the topic today? Anything in particular, or are you just?
Well, you know, a couple things I wanted to talk about. I mean, we did put, you know, talking about my ultimate guide to syncopation, which is here it is. That's for sure. If you don't have this book, it's a great guide to the classic Ted Reed syncopation, and I've done some things that are maybe a little bit different than most people have done in the past. I know that, you know, Freddie Gruber was a proponent of Ted Reed syncopation. Of course, Alan Dawson notably was also using Ted Reed syncopation. And, you know, I have some independent sections for the jazz thing, the Brazilian thing. I did some unique ways of moving around the kit. Some you've seen, but then some were interpretive ideas that I utilized that were kind of spawned off by just trying to find paths to impart phrasing wisdom, you know, because phrasing is a challenge. Like in other words, getting away from thinking about your more rudimental induced stickings, like thinking, oh, I'm going to play a paradiddle, I'm going to play a double paradiddle, I'm going to play a paradiddle diddle. And I do use those, but there's other ideas that I would take and kind of inspired from Gary Chafee's Sticking Patterns book to uniquely put you in the driver's seat to find more of a melodic approach to melody or improv. Now, of course, improv is on the lowest rung of our ladders of priorities. You know, our higher priorities are timekeeping and grooving and all that kind of stuff. And so, you know, there are some simple rock pattern things I put in there, but for my higher level way of dictating time, you know, you got to have the mechanics. If you don't have the mechanics and the motions and get into the dance and how things can move naturally and how you can be motivating the stick and redirecting the energy. As I always say, you are the director of the energy, and how you reimagine that energy to put it forward into a concept of what we call time that can add confidence as well as a very methodical way of moving to induce better timekeeping skills. You know, you got to loosen those mechanisms up as well. If you're playing, you know, one-handed 16th note molar, you're not just going to magically get that, but there are things inside our anatomy that we need to address so that the streamlined motion is accessible, that you're not, you know, having part of your brain think about, oh, can I get these 16th notes out? And kind of keeping you away from being a full engaged part of the music, which is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be providing our sense of presence when we're into the musical setting. So that being said, The other thing I just thought I'd bring up, because I was just thinking about it. I have these books. I don't really sit around and promote them a whole bunch, but I have my other book, Puzzles, Rhymes, and Riddles, which is 3 sections, and there are solutions to odd time phrasing and patterns. The patterns can be put into regular 4/4 time signature, but they can also be building blocks to getting into odd time ways of playing. So, 3, 5, 7, or whatever. And of course, when you say 3, 5, and 7, we know that, but you could have a 7/16, which might be different than 7/4, or 7/8. So those are things that I address in this book, which is great. And then at the end, my favorite section is the riddle section. I have the puzzle section, the rhyme section, and the riddles. What I did was just take groupings, 3 groupings, 5s, 7s, and 3s, 3s, 5s, and 7s, and put them into a sphere of playing against one another so that you are basically starting to hear those subdivisions. And as you combine them, gives you a little bit more ammunition for things that you could do. Those are also set into a groove framing, so you can use them in a groove setting, but also, again, a unique way of blending those to what I say being rhythmically clever. We can always think about all the 16th notes or 16th triplets and septuplets if you want to do odd time things. I don't use a lot of that. I do practice those from time to time based on all my studies out of Gary Chaffee's 2 books, Sticking Patterns and Rhythm and Meter Patterns, which are great books to go through. But the deeper dive of what you want to do in essence to play and to become a better performer and be, qualified to do a lot of things, know your triplets and your 16th notes. Those are your 2 subdivisions that you really want to get together with. And when I say that, it's a loose frame, because 16th notes would also bring us forward to like 8th notes or 32nd notes, and triplets could be 16th note triplets and perhaps quarter note triplets. But when you get that together and you're able to play those around and really get the essence of how those maneuver inside grooves. If you're playing a shuffle, well, everything is triplet based. So if you're shuffling along, you need to know how to, of course, in a blues, it's not about chops. It's all about the feel. It's about really having a certain, what I would say, more of a dry punctuation to it, because you're not trying to be slick and show off a lot in a blues setting. You're just there to be a really good groove and timekeeper. And the punctuation marks of those triplet builds or something like that, or just the end of a statement with like a 4-stroke rough, is just about all you need, depending upon how deep you're going. But, in general. And then, on the other side of the things for 8th note grooves and stuff like that, it depends on how deep you're going into that arena. So, but these books are good tools and good building block builders, kind of putting you forward to addressing things that you might want to have in your playing. So I think the phrasing thing is the one thing that I think all drummers want to have. So that easy gear shift from 2nd gear to 3rd gear to 4th gear. And if we just, as an analogy, say we have 8th notes, we have 8th note triplets, and we have 16th notes. That could be moved up a notch. You could say you have 16th notes and you have 16th triplets and 32nd notes. Those kind of smooth shifts are really important to work on. So for me, there's a lot of little settings I would do, and one of them is in my Ultimate Guide to Syncopation. So taking the classic Ted Reed idea, and I go back to the end of the book. So if I was looking at page 56 in the newer printing, if you have an old printing, it would be page 55. But now I'm conditioned more for the newer printing because that's the book I use more. If you went on page 56 and looked at number 37 and 38, I'm just going to break down the movement first and kind of operate around that. So if I take the movement, the accent structure for that is 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so there's some setups that I would use to kind of push forward so that the movement and how you dance around those accents is well established. But inside that, you're going to have your punctuation marks. And how do you get there? Well, you're always going to have some kind of an upstroke that precedes your downstroke. So what comes down had to have come up first. And so setting up a good upstroke to deliver the downstroke is absolutely imperative. But let me just outline and showcase how I would speak out the movement for number 37 in a German position, because we're going to have uniquely now, we'll be in that position where our fingers can flex open and close. And I want to get a bounce to a close. And when I'm getting that bounce, of course, that delivery is delivered from the good old lift of the molar method, and then pop that stick or hit that stick to the pad, let it open those fingers. And in this setting, you know, I could just do that. That's not a very productive way of using that energy. So as I said a moment ago, redirecting the energy is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to let that stick bounce, and it's as if my shirt sleeve got tagged along or caught on the stick and was motivated to let that stick bounce naturally as if the stick was a separate entity. So I always use the analogy of put a rubber ball on your stick tip, throw it down, and don't let it bounce backwards. That's not how it would bounce if you threw it directly down to the floor. It would bounce upward. So feel that vertical draw to the bounce of the stick. Okay, so that's the first accent. I've got a bounce, close. That's my second accent. And then in between, I've got a tap stroke. So here's my directive I would put forward is bounce, tap, close, up, down, up, tap, bounce, tap, close, up, down, up, tap, up, tap. Nice and easy. Then I usually go automatically to number 38. I use the 2 because 38 has now the left hand doing the double accent. So now you're going to have a down, up, tap, bounce, tap, close, up, down, up, tap, down, bounce, close, down, up, tap, down. And then you start to at least get the dance on the pad, and then you got to reconfigure that and work on the kit. Now, when you get to the kit, what changes is your path of least resistance to the floor tom would be this. And if I don't think we've solved the issue for StreamYard to use my interface unit to play on the drum kit. So it would be either distorted, or if I turn on my interface unit, I think we get nothing. So just going to use my imaginary floor tom over here. As I roll out, that's my path of least resistance. So now I have some French sensibilities. I know everybody talks about French grip as the thumb being on top. Let me qualify that. When you're playing timpani, you don't wrap your fingers around the mallet and play a roll like that. You can, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that do. But the teacher I had, who was a very, very excellent teacher back here in the 80s, and I was just talking to one of my former colleagues, I would say, or students at the Cal State University Northridge, Cal State Northridge. And that was Kalani Das, who is a great percussionist. He has since kind of moved on, is more online on YouTube, and has a world percussion channel on YouTube. He also plays ukulele and does some ukulele seminars and workshops, and as well, I think, Native American flute. He's also, I think, a musical therapist. So he's a pretty cool guy. And we were talking about Karen Irvin, our percussion teacher and timpani, and she had these, little exercises of trampoline bouncing off the timpani and keeping your fingers in a position where they stabilize the mallet. So when people say, thumbs up for French, that's really just a sideways performance of German. You're going to basically be pulling it here. I don't need that reflex in that position. I'll use it, and that would be under the guise of dialect or posture, gesture, and attitude. But in order to fulfill a better performance and reflex connection to my fingers, I'm going to keep them in a more open position. I always say they're in this slightly curled or contoured position to help support the stick. Are they wedged to the stick? No, because then the stick will not be able to breathe and move. So in the French grip, when I'm doing the exercises and the examples I just did, I have a little bit of a different directive. I'll still have my bounce, but instead of saying close, I'm not going to close my fingers. I'm going to catch the stick at the bottom of the stroke. And as I impact and drop, I want to get that nice pop out of that. Okay. When you're working with a floor tom and you go over to your right side, that's where you really get into my theory of redirecting energy, because the floor tom will provide a either very little rebound or a very irritated rebound. It's not going to be anything that's reliable. It's going to be one thing where you hit that floor tom and your stick may bounce in a funny way because the air blows back. My floor tom here is tuned a little bit higher, so I get a little bounciness to it, but it's very erratic. And if you've got a 16 that's deep, you got to work with that. And I'll tell you, on the sidebar, practicing, I would take some stick control or whatever Bruce Becker style exercises and just play them on the floor tom and listen to the clarity and be able to work with the erratic nature of the rebound and, pull that stick out to get a good tone. That goes into my analogy of skiing. When I was a kid skiing down an expert slope with deep moguls, and you try to look at where you were going to go and plan it out, but it doesn't work that way. As soon as you start to pick up speed, you might not hit the mogul at the precise spot you want to hit it, and you need to just bend and go with it with your knees. And so as a kid, I would sit there and kind of scope out and look at a line, but of course you didn't hit that line. So in a similar sense, when you are on the floor tom and things are bouncing erratically, you just need to go with it. You need to be able to maneuver and stay in control and be able to, again, redirect the energy of how your stick is impacting that floor tom. But so with the French grip approach for number 37, you'd have bounce, tap, catch, up, down, up, tap, bounce, tap, catch, up, down. Elbow slightly out, so I get a nice easy lift here. I don't want my elbow to be dragged up with the lifting of the stroke. And again, to nurture these reflexes takes a moment. I have much deeper, what I would call reframing your reflex exercises, finding pressure points and ways of maneuvering with the stick to shift and change. If you want to make a change, doesn't happen in 1 second. There's no instant potatoes. You're, going to be guided through what you do as long as I'm there, and you will get the results. It just takes that time. I wish I had a magic stick to wave over everybody to change their chops, but it doesn't work like that. And if you were, part or listening to the live stream of the panel discussion that I put together in collaboration with John DeChristopher and Rob Wallace, there was some high-level dudes that would basically say the same thing. If you talk to Dave Weckel or Steve Smith or Vinny Caliuta or Mark Schulman, Adam Nussbaum, all the guys that were there, those guys all had some, intimate moments with Freddie Gruber as a student. And Freddie would go through, in his sometimes cryptic way, but he would guide you to kind of fine tune the reflex change that you needed to produce the result. Now, you can theoretically talk about a lot of things. And I think conceptually, if we all had a conversation, we'd all agree. Yeah, that's very sensible. We would do that. But then, when you say, well, hold the stick like this, but you've been holding it like this for 22 years, it's not going to change. You're going to try to reshape your hand, and then the spring's going to go bang, and it's going to pop right back into where it was. So there's a methodical way to really address that and put it into order where you can make the changes. And it's not about a sticking. Stickings are supportive aids to change and to conduct a relationship with how you're moving. Not what you're doing, but how you're doing what you're doing, how you move. Those are rather important affairs. So, but again, going back to the Freddie thing, that was where Freddie was like, I think, kind of ahead of the pack on a lot of things. When I was a kid studying with him, he had a very detailed program, albeit it was still Freddie. So there was some, kind of a messy element to it in terms of his scheduling and all that stuff. But he was able to formulate a pretty good map. I mean, if I pulled out my books, which they're somewhere back here, but I'm not going to go reaching around, but there was a lot of detail. Let's put it that way. There was a lot of stuff where you really were investigating all that stuff. And he put it into a way that, for me, it made a lot of sense, as well as many guys. Some people didn't connect with it. That's fine. I know that there's a lot of people who would say, hey, man, could he even play? Hey, did you ever see John Madden play in the NFL? Did you ever see Sparky Anderson play in the major leagues? It's not really what it was about for Freddie. And he did play, but, what his playing career was doesn't really matter. Tony, Hi, Bruce. Would you please unwrap your new book for us and how we can apply it to extension? Okay. Yes. Thank you, Tony, for asking. So for my book, one of the things I did in the early section, the very beginning of the book, was I took early pages in Ted Reed's Syncopation that just, like page 16 and 17, for example. Those are eighth note triplets and eighth notes. And what I did was make all the eighth note triplets rolls. So they become 16th note triplets. And I put a very specific choreography behind them. And they're specifically meant to be played slow, because I think, when you're playing rolls, you want to be able to get the double to expand and contract each stroke. You could hammer them out. You could tap them out. And you might feel, wow, I got better control. But that's not really how it's going to work when you're getting to up-tempo performances of double strokes. And in order for you to flex the hand out and also feel the smoothness of the movement, mind you, when you're doing that choreography and it's in a larger frame, you can see every nuance of what's going on. You can see any kinks in the hardware, any disruption to the orbit. And if you can get inside that orbit clearly and see how things move, you're going to be better able to arrange it and smooth it out. And that will have a large impact when you play faster. So, for example, I'm just going to play like number 1 on page 16, because I have it, in the old gray matter here. And I would have, for my double stroke roll, I would say I have a few different ways of arranging the choreography. And I think it's rather important to create a relationship, a spoken word relationship with what the rhythmic values are, but from the movement side of things. So if I was doing this, I could get really deep in the hole and say pivot catch. So my stick is pivoting through my fulcrum, my fingers are extended, and I kind of catch, using that word loosely, or close. I could say pivot close, whatever works. I'm not really always bound by a chain to my verbal calls, but I've used them for a long time and I've readdressed them a little bit and tried to update them. But so, for example, for the triplet roll, 16th note triplet, this would be positioned over the 8th note triplet. It will be pivot catch drop, pull double, down, and then I would have a down. So inside that, without all the directive for the doubles, I would have down, up, tap, down. That would be the simpler way of speaking it out. But sometimes when you do that, you might be missing a little bit of the stroke. So for number 1, I would have when I'm playing that, I'm super mindful of coming down on the numbers. That may not work when you're playing faster. That may be too much movement. In fact, when you're moving faster, you have to start to become more efficient and start to streamline your movement to accommodate faster tempos. But as I said, this is not about playing fast. This is about getting a nice controlled lift and drop to every doubles, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2. So again, all the numbers are down. So when I'm doing that with the 8th notes, you see I have a down with my right hand playing all the numbers. My tap strokes are just a wristed stroke. Down, tap, and inside this movement, if I just speak out the actual impact, are 2 moves that we're not speaking out, but they're happening. As I'm playing this downstroke, I have to readdress a lift to get back down. So I have an upstroke to set up the down. As I do my tap stroke, I have a turn to set up my wristed drop as I'm playing those tap strokes. So while you could also put your attention to down, tap, I could also focus on this. Up, turn, up, turn, up, turn, up, turn, up. When you're playing faster, again, you're going to probably go a little bit into readdressing that mode. For example, I'll just take something out of stick control. It's rather easy, I think. Page 11, number 1, the 9-stroke roll. He's got his 4 eighth notes to the 2 groups of the 16th notes over the quarter notes, so 3 E and a 4 E and a, but of course we're all conditioned to look at that in cut time. So you could think one E and the roll becomes two E and etc. So what's my point? If I was playing it faster, let's go slow first. I could have down, tap, up, tap, down, tap, up, tap, 1 and 2 and 3 E and 4 E and 1. And that might be helpful for certain kinds of literature. But if I was playing it faster, I'm not going to. That's too much lift and drop. So we're going to get rid of the downstroke on the roll, and we're going to take that roll instead of going down, tap, up, tap, down. I'm going to play it tap, tap, up, tap, down. And that up, tap, down is the end of the roll, the punctuation mark. And so, knowing that I'm starting that way, I'll go down, tap, 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 up, tap, down, tap, 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 up, tap, down. And I'll play it faster. It would be. And that would be more efficient than doing the more large frame movement that I'm using for the beginning of my book. And so I went through. I even went back to, I think, pages 14 and 15. Yes, those are the triplets with the quarter notes, and then I went the triplets eighth notes, and then pushed it up to 16ths with quarter notes, and then 16ths with eighth notes, and then all the broken up 16th notes. So if I'm not mistaken, I'm just going to put my head out there into the memory of Ted Reed. I have a copy here, but I'm not going to reach over there. But number 1 on page 24 would be 1 E and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Okay, so that's a 5-stroke roll. I'm going to take the 2 16th notes, the 1 and the E. I'm going to make them doubles, and I would have down, up, tap, down, tap, down, tap, down, tap, down, up, tap, down. On page 25, I can't remember which number it is. It's either number 12 or 13. You have repetitive 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and. Okay, that's the one anomaly of every roll that I would put out there. Every other roll on, in our vocabulary would have an up, tap, down to punctuate the end of the roll. So if I played a 9-stroke roll, tap, tap, up, tap, down, or as I played it earlier, down, tap, up, tap, down. If I play a 13-stroke roll, down, tap, 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 up, tap, down, or it could be tap, 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 up, tap, down. And what's the up, tap, down? It's just the end of the roll. It's like closing the door as you leave the house. It's the punctuation mark. It could be either a period or an exclamation point, and the exclamation point would just mean that we accented the last note getting out of there. And so those are the kind of things that you want to be mindful of. It's amazing to me, with all the students I've had through many years, how their rhythmic association with the rolls is somewhat murky. And this is where I got into this. Now, this again is a very dry interpretation because you have either triplets or 16th notes. But you can get into some etude books, like the Wilcoxon book, although he's got them all very nicely laid out and designed. Or the book I like to use, The Contemporary Percussionist, where there's no stickings and there are no directives of rolls. And then you can get in and start to reimagine the roll. For example, when we see a quarter note roll to a quarter note, from the method book and the very beginning stages of developing, we automatically go 9-stroke roll, but it doesn't have to be. It could be a 13-stroke roll. It could be 1 E and E 2. You could make it like 30-second notes and go 1, 2. So again, do we have to stand by that 9-stroke idea? No. And if you did do that in an orchestra, let's say you were playing a long roll from, beat 1 to 1, and you're going, and it's like a whole note roll, and the tempo's like 1, 2, 3, 4 E and a 1. Conductor's going to look at you and go like, what are you doing? That's not a roll. You'd want to buzz it, right? Or take it to a more dense rhythmic level if they wanted it clean, depending upon what the setting is musically. So anyway, that's the first section. I addressed that in Syncopation. Going into the next sections, let's see, as I get into my jazz concepts, just basically different approaches to playing the ride cymbal pattern. It's not the ride cymbal pattern, but the different ways of developing vocabulary or independence. So the very initial way, you got to play the melody with the left hand and don't disrupt the fluidity of the ride cymbal. You might find if you're doing this swing pattern, now this is a very dedicated way of swinging the cymbal. It's not necessarily going to be a one size fits all for a lot of jazz styles. So are you talking about the rolls? How are you applying the open rolls to the closed rolls? I'm not really doing any closed rolls. If I'm doing, closed rolls, buzz rolls, those are different. I have a whole different approach, and I didn't really apply that to syncopation. That's for Tony, who just asked a question. Everything that I'm looking to do is to stay clean with the roll. So whatever the arrangement of choreography, we're looking at clean doubles, super clean. And I have different little calisthenics that I put forward to kind of run those over and over and over and over again so that you really get a chance to get those doubles to work the inside of the hand, right? Get the inside of the hand and the stick to really become one so that the cleanliness of the double is our sort of our highlight of what we're looking to do. So, but back to the second section, the jazz concepts, getting the snare melody, when you're playing this pop, drop up, and sitting in a French grip position and letting that stick be just a pendulum swinging without any interruption. And you might play some melody against it. You might find if you're going da 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 da, you might find that some of those might disrupt the pull up on the ones and the threes. So you want to get the essence of that independence. Now it becomes not just independence of rhythm, it becomes independence of movement, which is a little bit higher, I think, of a acquisition. And so when you're doing that, one of the bigger takeaways along with that would be the sing-songiness and the melodic approach of what you can get out of Ted Reed's syncopation. So, to the point where you can just make up those melodies and I'm always hearing like fake big band songs. I know you're like, what's a fake big band song? Well, the fake big band song would be like da da ba dee ba doo da da ba da ba 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 doo doo ba dee ba ba doo da ba doo ba da dee ba doo ba. So that kind of melodic approach is what I want to throw into my left hand. I don't want to sit and just like have a mathematical stick and feel like everything's staccato. I want to have more of a melodic approach that sits on the underside of what I'm doing. Mike Powell, do you drive the stick more from the back with the pinky and the ring finger? Yes, I do. And it's not that I'm driving it more from the back. It's just the stick is seated in the hand and the usage of the ring and pinky finger is an absolute value. And it's something that needs to be developed and it takes time because they are the weaker fingers and their inclusion and their reflexive nature needs to be meticulously developed so that things work, so that you're sitting back here. You could do, again, like posture and gesture things and get out and get that stick to sit, out of the thumb and index finger and play from the back of the hand. I don't do that. I do a fit in there where you don't have to be flexing and repositioning your hand all the time. It's sort of built in from here to here, from here to here. And all those attributes, even in my French grip, my ring and pinky finger are part of the team. And they provide one of the most important pressure points back here. So can I see that again, Jeff? I love it. An observation. My young students gravitate to French grip. Their eyes glaze over when I talk about grip. I often leave the nuances of grip to later lessons. I worry about the back. Yeah, if you have young students, your most important role as an educator is to create enthusiasm for the instrument and not get too heavy about technique because you're going to lose them then. You're not going to start going, all right, let's do this and then let's turn and it's just not going to be a helpful aid to their quest wanting to be drummers. You got to get inside their heads. These days, I don't really have any young kids. I have a few. I have 3. All told, everybody else that stutters with me, most everybody is in their 50s and 60s. And then, of course, there are the people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. But I would say that the greater majority of my students sit in that older range. And if I could just promote that good old adage of you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Yes, you can. And these guys are all bearing witness to that in their approach. And I have several guys from higher profile guys that you would know and many guys that you don't know that make amazing changes in their playing. I had one of my students who's been with me now a little bit of a shorter time, who at one point looked up at me and he said, I don't feel my wrists, they don't hurt anymore. I was like, great, that's what we want. Now, I'm not a doctor, but I know that there are sensible things you can do to either bring back, that usage of what you're doing, provided things are aligned. If you don't have good alignment, then it's not going to work. Woof. There's Jake. Jake Slichter's been with me for a long time, and he's made a lot of changes. And still fine-tuning and detailing. He's that kind of a guy. He wants to really push his headroom to a higher space. Are you going to use that on the gig all the time? No, but there are subtle nuances that you can slip into the gig that maybe you didn't have before. If you're doing more of a, let's say, what we call the meat and potatoes gigs. Just those little subtle nuances can make, a joyful internal, what do I want to say, recognition in your own playing when you're playing. Maybe nobody else knows, but you're going like, wow, that's cool. I really did that great. Of course, you don't want to get too, into the ham bone spot where you're, trying to do too many things. You're a contributor. You got to be in the, the puzzle. You got to be a piece of the puzzle and not try to overshadow everybody else. But so going on with the jazz concepts, there's the layout of what I do is what I call split melody, and just taking a very simple formula to that, taking all the ones and threes and converting them to the snare drums and all the twos and fours bass drums. If we did it the Alan Dawson way, he had long notes, foot, short notes, snare. And at some point you get, kind of an oblong way of doing it. So for me, I always thought of jazz kind of backwards. If I was thinking backbeat of 1, 2, 3, and 4. For the jazz thing, I'd think like ones, threes, twos, and fours. And it just made a lot of sense for me to start there. So if I was playing number 1 on page 34, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And playing that against the ride cymbal again might create a little bit of a pull to your lift and drop and the fluidity of that. And so you want to basically kind of, get in there and knock it out. Nothing comes from doing nothing. Sit down, put sticks in your hand, pay attention, be mindful, you'll make changes. How do you feel about the Bill Ste Grip the gift? For Bill, it works. For me, using the thumb in those kind of ways, and I've seen many students that have had that get a little like a tendon issue in here. So you can bite the stick in different ways and keep it inside the hand, and it doesn't have to be driven by the thumb. I get his sensibilities. It works for him. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And there are many people that would have idiosyncratic ways of doing what they're doing. And if it's expressing the music and it's not hurting, cool. I mean, this is where I go back to any kind of a posture and gesture and a mangling of the stick is okay, provided you've put in the time and you understand the fundamental things that you want to be in touch with. There are direct drive approaches in terms of like how you align things to get a better production of a roll or of a 3-stroke rough. If I'm kind of doing my 3-stroke roughs and coming in at a diagonal, I may not get the crispy direct drive vertical pull that I'm looking for. So if I'm playing, there's an automated mode in my hands that know when it's not getting the essence of the cleanliness, and it just switches. It's like that internal mechanism that I call the inner logic of movement, where you just know how to adjust. And as you go through the process, that happens in playing too. There's something on the gig that doesn't feel right. I have a few different arrangements of things that I could do. So just as a point of, for a simple explanation, if I'm playing 16th notes, and I'm going into a molar thing, that's one way of doing it. I could do it in a French grip molar. Now, mind you, if I'm doing it in French grip, I'd be I don't want to say relegated, but I'd be more mindfully sitting on the stick tip. That might give us more that old school 60s R&B tonality of like a, what's the guy's name from the James Brown drummers? J-Bo, but the guy that preceded him, my brain is popping right now. But that approach, and then if you're sitting here and getting that shoulder of the stick to the top hat, well, there's your James Gadsden. Clyde Stubblefield, I'm sorry. That's who I was thinking of. And now I'm in the back of the hand, and, you know, he's got his finger more kind of open up. I don't want to do that. I can make that feel good, but I can keep my thumb and index finger, the integrity and the shape of that, in a place where it's not going to agitate. However, like I said, if you want to do that, you can, provided you can come back to our home base. So those little nuances of being able to shift and change in the mode of a gig where maybe something doesn't feel right between you and the bass player, or maybe you're not familiar with the bass player and it's new, and so you're trying your normal groove and it's not feeling right. You can make physical adjustments to the delivery of the stick, to the cymbal or the hi-hat, or how you're playing the backbeat, and try to accommodate. I always looked at me as being the guy. So if something sucked, I'd go, well, what can I do to not make it suck? And even if I thought I sucked, maybe I didn't, but I would just try to like make the whole unit come together. So whatever I could do, I would take responsibility in trying to steer the ship. And that's that old adage of like, you know, you're the drummer, you're kind of the leader in many ways. Hello, backstage from Six Flags Fiesta. Hey, man, San Antonio. Nice place. Bruce, what are some of your approaches to page 46 of Ted Reed? Well, now you got me caught there. What's page 46? Did I do that? 46. Okay, so 46. Are you talking about the last page, exercise 9? You know, that would just be reading that down. That's the same thing that I would do out of the Charles Memphis book. He's got like a series of exercises like that. Now, you can go into an interpretive thing. I'm more just trying to get the element of phrasing and swing and nuance and the subdivisions that you're going to be coming across. So when you're playing, you know, 16th notes inside. So I'm sorry, for this piece, I got to kind of just stare at it for a minute because it's something that I don't sit around and work as much. Yeah, you know, it'd be like zabba-da-da and do-dat, ba-do-ba-do-ba, ba-da-da-da-da, do-da-do-da, da-da-da-da, do-da, ba-da-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da-do-da, ba-da-da-da-da. There's your great groups of threes. Those are always good for the jazz drummers to know. I rock too, where we do these cycles of three. But I would just go in and read it down, getting really comfortable with that. And as far as like the phrasing, this would be one system of phrasing that I would use, but I would couple it with other things moving around the kit. And so there would be, man, let's see, let me lay it out quickly. I would use things that would be derivative of this. So the Charles Memphis book has a few etudes in there that are really well constructed for phrasing, and just being able to play it on the snare drum with a nice feathered quarter note on the bass drum, 2 and 4, and be able to move through it and swing. Again, in Ted Reed here, you only see a roll at the end. So a couple of the etudes that I start with in the Memphis book have a lot of rolls, and again, helpful to develop a relationship with the rhythmic outline of the roll. If you don't know the book and you haven't looked through it, I mean, it may be like a black and white paper. I would supply the 64 pack of Crayola crayons to give you some insights as to what you can get out of this book. Or same with Syncopation. That's really what my book is about. But, you know, to do everything, I've got little different systems. So for more of that kind of larger syncopated phrasing, I would use like these. He's got 3 in this book. They're all labeled a la breve. Why all 3 a la breve? Why not a la breve 1, a la breve 2, a la breve 3? I don't know. So I don't know if Charles Memphis is still walking on the planet, but maybe that would be a question for him. But these are designed, again, to really work a nice system of phrasing so that you get a jazz phrasing. So, for example, I have the a la breve up here. It's on page 49 if you have the book. And I'm not worried about the tempo that this guy has written out because it sounds out of breath. So as just a nod back to Freddie Gruber would always tell me, breathe, right? Breathe. Make it breathe. So have a fabric of space. If you're trying to go and getting all out of breath, not conducive to building up a relationship with how things can move faster. So when you're playing it slow and you're getting an actualized approach for spacing value of notes, and you're sitting inside that with your subdivisions, you can manage that much better at a slower tempo. So anyway, for this one, I'll play just a little bit down. You'd have 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4. And on and on and on. So inside, there's opportunities to look at what you can do sticking wise. So this one is a little less. There are some things that I would certainly recommend, but the second one has some things that I would definitely sit inside, and that would be moving what I call the ups and downs of paradiddles and getting that dance together so you can get a little bit more of the swing value using your up and down strokes. What are your thoughts on first and second finger fulcrum? I get more of a vertical path and flow from the second finger. Well, so I mean, they work as a team. I wouldn't work just without the index finger. I'll always work as a trio. So how those fingers on the back end are connected and bonded to the stick for a wrist bounce or for molar, and not that they're bonded tight there in the molar, but they're supportive on the underside of the body of the stick as a shock absorber. So I'm not hammering it out. I need the stick to breathe. And then there's a whole component. Do I let the stick bounce really far away from the palm? I could do a really open-handed molar, but it's still like there's my main contributor to the pivot. But I can also play molar without the middle finger and play and get that middle finger to be passively seated with the stick and not have to engage it. So lots of factors to kind of go through on that. But as far as like the building blocks, there's a complete continuity of how my thumb and index finger are seated on the stick, whether it's in German, whether it's in French. I can even make the case with how you sit in a traditional grip position. So like here's my thumb and index finger in trad grip right here. Okay, I could close it down. That would be more of a closed position, but I could also go to the cradle position. But my point is there's my hand position. I'm just going to draw my middle finger down there. And if you watched the panel discussion that I put together with John and Rob, Vinny was talking about the story of him hanging with Jimmy Chapin and Freddie Gruber. And they were like, in his hotel room. He was trying to sleep, and I guess those guys were just there, wanting to be there. And in their own orbit of conversation, Jimmy was probably going, I see it works like this. And Vinny's telling was like, Freddie was going, this is this. This is this. And I know that one because I hung deep in the trenches with that guy, spending nights in hotels when we would travel in Europe, or him staying at my apartment, or me staying up way too late on an evening with him at his house when he was living over on Zelza, staying up till 4 or 5 in the morning. So I could get him kind of calm and get him to have a little less cryptic conversation, especially when I lived in Europe, because I had more pointed questions. I had been on my own. I was not studying with him, but hanging and watching him. I've been working hard on technique, And triple strokes are one of the things that are giving me a problem. I throw, bounce, catch, but I have issues creating an extra note on the catch. You know, depends on when you're saying triple strokes. Are you just looking at the bounce like this? Or are you looking at, I mean, that would be the same essence of the triple stroke. It would just be, you know, having that. So there's a molar component to drive to help induce a locomotive action. Again, you're the director of the energy of the stick. If you know how your anatomy can work well, you're going to be better suited. But the inside structure of the hand still has to be well set up, because if you have, you know, a shoddy embouchure, so to speak, and you're trying to throw it down, that's not going to be helpful. So, you know, how you're sitting in the hand is going to certainly provide a better mechanism to throw down those three. Hey, Bruce, question. 3/4 swing patterns. What would the choreography be for that? I'm talking about quarter. Let's see. That's what I'm talking about. Is quarter to, wow, what is quarter to eighths followed by quarter? Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. You know, basically it's, I'm thinking in three. So a 3-note molar, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So I get that initial throw on 1 that carries over and bounces into 2. And then I let go and I pick up on 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, a 1, 2, 3, a 1, 2, a 3. Now that would be, you know, the starting point. You can get in there and play it. You can go dan, 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 down and just kind of hammer it out. And for imposing your expressive nature on that, technique does not have to be always sitting in a pretty and perfect position. Expression is expression. But if you're only challenged by just sitting inside your hand to play time and things are moving at a quicker space and your stick is stuck in your hand, that's not going to be helpful. But those little dialectical nuances are always part of something that you could use in the landscape of playing. However, honestly, you want to have a little bit more of a flex factor inside your delivery system so that you're moving and you're flowing and you're playing what you hear, you know, and having a bite or a point. Being loose is great, but loose without density, you know, you got to have a little point to the stick. If everything sounds like a spaghetti noodle al dente, then, you know, we need to readdress what's going on. I've had students that come to me and they're already kind of too loose, and then you have to kind of tighten up things in the hands a little bit to arrange what they're doing, because it doesn't have any point to it. So you want to have a good snap, crackle, and pop to your playing. So anyway, I lost where I was with that question, but I know, with the triple stroke thing, that would be, you know, and again, what are the triple strokes for? Yeah, to condition your hands. I get it. You know, playing a fast ride cymbal pattern would be built on that too. There's a mechanism of, you know, throwing down and letting the stick go. You also have, you know, the ergonomics, how your cymbal is positioned. If you're up here and your shoulder is sustaining all that weight of your arm and you're trying to play the cymbal, you're playing it. It's exactly the right phrase. You're playing the cymbal. I want the stick and the angle to kind of help facilitate natural physical principles. If I'm here and I have my cymbal angled like I do here, I'm going to be able to kind of drop easily with the weight of that stick, right? The weight of this stick, and that my forearm kind of gives with it. That would be one approach for playing fast tempo. Then you got to have the push-pull method together so you can feel the expansion of the stick pulling away from your palm and your fingers living with that movement of the stick. And the molar method, because there certainly is that locomotive action when you're playing up-tempo stuff. But it exists even in the slow tempo. You still have this going on, right? If you're just doing this, that's not helpful. It's a video post I put up of Freddie Gruber back in, I don't know, several months back. And he's talking about playing, and he's saying, if you're doing this, you know, just like being very rigid, he was always talking about lifting and dropping and getting into the spirit of how you can lift and get to the bottom of the stroke, the bottom of your cycle of lift and drop. And that changes depending upon what drum you're talking about. If that's to the cymbal, there's the bottom. But there's the bottom for my floor tom. But you want to be mindful where your surfaces are so you know where the stroke ends. And you can physically feel that drop. That's an important value because when you're talking about letting go and dropping, it's counterintuitive for drummers to do that. I see time and time again, everybody wants to put a little force behind their strokes. Okay, you can use that, but there's a better way to design it so that you can maybe lift yourself into a hybrid and get a little bit more of that force. You know, when you're playing rock and roll, I get it. But still, you don't have to throw it down. You're going to basically kill the sound out of your drum anyway. When you hit the drum really hard, you shock the shell. You don't do the acoustic resonant factor any good by throwing it in. Would you talk about how the hand is acoustic? Okay, so yeah, the acoustic chamber, the hand, you know, if you're set here, I mean, you can do it in French grip very easily. You can demonstrate where that hand is going to be, of course, slightly augmented to accommodate the French grip, but how the fingers are delicately positioned around the stick. If I'm doing a bounce, now I don't know how that's going to pick up on my Samson Meteor mic here, but that's pretty full and fat. If I kind of hold around it, and I'm not death gripping it, but I have my fingers wrapped around, that's not that tone. So, okay, acoustic chamber, just how you house the stick. Okay, when you're getting into the German position, where you're going to have your fingers in a constant, what we would say, rounded out position to sit underneath the palm, whoops, and have that sculpted position like a nice acoustic chamber. There you go. Think about playing clave, the instrument, the claves. You hold them like this. You don't death grip them. They're very vibrant and resonant. If I So in order to sit like that, again, I could sit here all afternoon with a dozen of students, one after another, and go, just hold your stick like this. That's not really going to get us to the punchline. But there you go. There's that nice acoustic chamber. And I don't really want to close down here. In fact, if I add tension here and I'm kind of squeezed here and a little more pressure is put here, that closes down access to the back fingers. It's not helpful to the design of the hand. So I hope that addresses your question, Tony. Anyway, I'm looking at the time here. We're kind of hitting that hour zone, Jeffrey. What's happening out there in your world? Uh-oh, don't tell me Jeff has flown the coop. Jeffrey, are you there? Ah, okay.
Yeah, I'm here, man.
There he is. There he is.
He's in the little box, and you forgot that he's got to add himself to the stage.
He went running out to Starbucks, and he's getting like a croissant.
I'm making a ham sandwich out here.
I better get back to man the posts, man.
Yeah, I forgot you got to add yourself back to the stage.
One of these, right?
It's been a while. That's why. And I was like, I've been on vMix for a while, but StreamYard's great, but I haven't got the ecosystem again. So I'm trying to manage these great questions, by the way, today. Been a real joy for the questions. I think they've really been some of the best we've had.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Everybody's been a real joy to talk to today. And yeah, it was a quick hour.
It was.
We should do this more often. I think Q&As are great. I think people are always looking for some answers in this. I don't know. It's very hard because we see all this stuff on TikTok and Instagram and everything's coming at us real fast. We're like, I really should work on it. And we save all that stuff. And then, I don't know, without insight, without a little deeper insight or somebody to either give us confirmation or that we're doing the right thing or not. Sometimes it's really difficult. You get stuck in your own way, at least for me. And I'm one of those older guys who took lessons from you. And I have to say, yeah, you're right. You can definitely learn. It's a lie that you can. I mean, maybe that takes a couple extra moments for the myelin to kick in, but myelin doesn't stop forming in older age. That was always been a myth. So, and
that's the joy of having your hands around sticks and practicing and moving forward, because you always get a inner sense of joy and accomplishment if you keep pushing forward. again, I'll just say, if you're holding your sticks tight and you're playing a paradiddle like this for 42 years, learn to let it go so it bounces. Well, that's another mindset. You got to reframe your reflexes because they're trained to have already done that. So to readdress that, you have information. It just needs to be kind of brought around to a little bit of a different revelation and a different sense of how you're connecting with the stick.
It's like any relationship. Just don't hold on too tight.
There you go. That's right. I did want to say, look out for this year, man, because I'm looking at what I'm calling my Platinum Technique series, which will be coming out perhaps in the middle of the summer. We haven't really put that forward. What was that last question?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. Mark just threw one in here at the last second. Sound check.
Is the stick on the pads of the back finger or behind them? No, man, you want to be on. What's your most tactile position of your fingers? The fingerprint. You know, you don't touch some fabric and go like, nice, in the palm. You go, ooh, that's cashmere or whatever. So you want sensitivity? You want to sit on the fingerprints, man.
Does that, do you find, I mean, because this is an argument I see all the time about where to place these things. I have to say that was something I had to shift my mindset with you. You know, you play more rock or whatever. I always held a little bit tighter. I think a lot of guys do. Have you had a lot of questions around this about control as you're playing harder rock and maybe you're in a bigger setting? Is there a difference between that and the jazz setting versus maybe a more traditional rock?
Sure, there's always a modulation. It's like, you know, when you're, I don't know, I'll do this for my analogy because I'm going there later in June.
Okay.
When I drive in LA, I know everything of what I'm doing, right? I'll be going to Germany and I'll be driving in Germany and Austria, and the headspace has to redefine how things work there. So culturally, rock, jazz, a little bit different. So I have a little bit of a different sensibility. I'm going to play a little louder. I'm not going to play super loud because I just know the tonality of my drums and what the range of what I can do to hit them to still stay in a lovely acoustic zone for them, for their residents.
Yep.
But, you know, I wouldn't necessarily be so fixated on sitting in my more balanced position with my left hand because it's going to be dropping in and playing a backbeat. And in most cases, when I was doing the thousands of cover gigs that I did when I moved back to LA, and even before I moved away from LA, I mean, I was just doing cover gigs, jazz gigs too, and in the big band and stuff. But, you know, if I was to weigh out the percentages, man, I did a lot of those club cover gigs. You got a different mentality. It works differently. Oh, there's the ultimate guide to technique and beyond. That, folks, is for European folks, right? If you're in Europe, register, man. There's a couple spots left over there. It's going to be an intensive weekend, like a little orientation on Friday, June 21st. And then we're going to have 2 days, the 22nd, 23rd, Saturday and Sunday, full days. I'll break a lot of stuff down. I'll have, you know, a very guiding hand because we will be in the 3-dimensional zone. And it's a lovely place on the planet to sit. Man. If you've ever been to Tyrol in Austria, this little village, Mayrhofen, has a place in my heart because I learned to ski there back in 1971. 70, 71? Yeah. 70, 71, and 71, 72.
Wow.
Theo, I took lessons with Freddie Gruber during a brief stay in 74. Wow. Just turned 70.
A minute ago. Wow.
Yeah. Bruce always resonates with me. Very articulate and comprehensive. Thank you, Theo. I appreciate that, man. You know, yeah, all good.
It's very nice. Very nice.
Steve, that's Steve from Toronto. Steve's a longtime educator up there in Toronto at Humber College. I think Steve's been there for more than 32 years, Steve. You'd have to tell us all. I've been sharing your choreography phrasing concepts with my college students, and it's been a real game changer for them. Looking forward to our upcoming lessons. That's right. We're going to be hitting in May. So, yeah. And if you want to contact me, you know, just go through the usual routes. Just go to my website. There's a form there. Jeffrey was the mastermind of building my website and tweets and updates and all that stuff.
Yeah, blame me.
Yeah, you know, I'm around, but I am looking to do a more concierge approach coming up later this year. For those who can't maybe schedule something on a regular time zone, or we're out of phase with our time zones. I have students all over the world, so it's always an interesting challenge, but it always works out. I got a guy in New Zealand, a couple guys in Australia, a guy in Singapore, Taiwan, India, all over Europe, and then a bunch of guys in Canada, and all through the States. And I've had guys in other zones as well. I think I've hit every continent except our Antarctica. I haven't had a penguin call me up and say, "Hey man, can you teach me how to play drum?"
Well, that'd be kind of fun. Yeah. Mac, I just posted this because I see a lot of this online about, well, the question is, are you able to please post more videos of Freddie Gruber behind the drum?
I have some, the videos, my brother was videoing it. He had a shaky hand. I don't know what happened to him that day. Maybe he had too much coffee, but it's a clinic I did with Freddie in 1994. I did 5 clinics with Freddie. This was probably the best of them, but David was phasing in and phasing out due to the potential loss of battery power. And we were in Europe and didn't have an adapter at that place. So anyway, could
you imagine if we had phones back then, though? I mean,
Freddie played how he played. He had a certain vibe. If you watched his hands, they worked, man, and his feet worked conceptually. On the bandstand, I only saw him play with our group. He sat in with the David Becker Tribune on a tune, maybe twice, I think. Just a blues, and he was just playing time. I think his sensibilities weren't like A-frame because he hadn't been playing in a number of years. But I saw him play on the kit and how he played, and he had a certain way of phrasing and playing that was quite unique. If you were to talk to Jimmy Chapin, Jimmy's now long gone, but Jimmy would have given a nice telling of Freddie Gruber's, playing style, etc. back in the 40s, where he was very polyrhythmic. In fact, Jimmy said something like that, 40-something years have gone by and nobody's caught up to Freddie's polyrhythmic styles. So what does that mean? I wasn't there. I can't say. But I know that how his head worked. And like I said before, footage or not footage, it doesn't really matter.
It's true, but it's a shame because it's somehow, if we can't see, we can't believe. And so I don't think he's ever going to get his recognition as due because we don't have these archived, right? Unfortunately. Yet you see so many players who are affected by him that you do know in some way who can speak to it. But it's hard.
The panel we put together was first class. Vinny, I've been hanging with Vinny for a while now. And so Vinny was not a real student, but he did hang with Freddie and had some in-depth conversations. And so he brought forward his insights and understandings. And of course, Dave and Steve, who did have hands-on. I was at their lessons when I was a younger guy, back in the 90s. Just ask them. I mean, those guys are going to tell you what's up. I mean, they did on the panel discussion. If you don't know where it's at, it's on YouTube. It's live from my drum room with John DeChristopher. Johnny D knew Freddie way back in the days when he was working with DW. And, I'm not going to be an apologist or try to say, oh, Freddie was this and the greatest. I know what he did. I have a lot of my concepts have been built off that template. Exactly. So, if you're looking for more, come and hang. I recommend watching Remembering Freddie Gruber, Special Guest Part 1 and 2. Thank you.
And I think that was really good that you did that because I think that really added some. I mean, there's some, like the people in here, you have some really good instructors long term. Your best instructors sometimes are people you just don't know, right? Like that's the whole thing. Some of the best people that have the best influence into playing are people that are in the shadows. Not everybody has to be out front being that person, right?
I think it's a challenge to be, running both heads. I ran both heads all the time. I've had a passion for teaching since I was a kid before I played drums. So my head was always somewhat problem solve head, whether it was how to ski, how to play tennis, sitting with a baseball bat and getting my swing together or throwing the ball and pitching, all those factors. And I just, I was a kid who was like, didn't have a father that was like in there helping you out because that just wasn't his vibe. He had a different vibe.
Sure.
So I had to figure it out on my own. And when it came to drumming, I had good instruction from the beginning. And just when I met Freddie after, 5 or so years of playing, it just made sense. His mechanical breakdown and his quirkiness kind of made sense. I mean, I was a tongue-tied young kid. I wouldn't have had a lot to say or really any questions of any note that would be, worth speaking about. But as I grew and I could play, which I could play as a kid, but as I grew and started to formulate deeper concepts, then my head started to get a little more deeper into how can I narrate this? Because I don't want it to be just a cryptic thought. I wanted to be able to pass on. So like one of my very early students when I was teaching at the Music Stop, which is also a place where Freddie Gruber started his teaching in Canoga Park here, run by Mel Zelnick and formerly with Terry Gibbs, the great vibist. I had the young Glenn Sobel. Glenn started with me when he was a kid. So I was able to like kind of set Glenn in a certain mold and path. And Glenn being the very meticulous, serious young kid that he was, which I saw right away, he's really made, I don't know, what do you say? I mean, he's out there all the time. I mean, he's as good as it gets, I mean, there's nobody going to be able to go beyond. I mean, not that they don't go beyond, but like hitting the heights of what Glenn could do career wise, as well as his playing styles, because he covers the bases in a large landscape of music. And, I think that I want to not take full credit for that, but I will say I'll take the credit for being seriously connected to that kid and mindfully pushing him forward so that he, made it. That's, again, our role as educators for the kids, to be an enthusiastic, flag-waving, drumstick-pushing guy to kind of get them into it so that they become enthusiastic students and want to grow.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to maintain your passion. As a kid, it's hard to maintain passion as an adult for different reasons. And so on our way out, yes, in fact, Dave Weckel was on your panel with John T. Christopher, and he was, absolutely.
Dave Weckel did believe in Freddie Gruber. Of course he did. Course. Yeah. Yep. I was there at one of Dave's lessons, man.
Our last couple on our way out, I thought it was always nice. It's great how you play the contemporary book etudes.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, I love that book. And there's so many little nuances that I put into it that I kind of set up a little game with it so that it has some substance. Again, that would be going back to Tony's things about phrasing and stuff like that, or how you do Ted Reed. This would be some of the initial ideas of some phrasing building blocks, just to get a general idea of swing. Okay, we don't all have to become jazz players, but the R&B and the jazz influence and all that stuff it's all swing induced. I mean, Bonham had that. Listen to everything on Led Zeppelin 2, and everything is it's like da 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 da. It's like da 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 da. That's not how he plays.
No.
So that kind of swinginess is so important. Hey, Ramon, how are you, man? Good to see you, man. Ramon, that guy's a badass. Ramon's got his, this wristy thing that he has from the tambourine, and then also from the double stick thing. And he's
insane
Brazilian guy, so he breathes that music into its zone.
Yeah, because you see a lot of people will do these really fast movements, but to make it musical?
No, Ramon's a musical.
That's so Brazilian to me. It's so South American to take that and be able to make that musical. So
awesome, Ramon. Hey, Ramon, just a reminder, when you're here in LA, give me heads up, man. I mean, I can't stray too far away from my home, but come out to Woodland Hills and we'll hang. We'll go and have a coffee down at the Paris Baguette or the Starbucks or whatever your choice is.
He never buys me a coffee.
Well, you got to come out here too, dude.
Come
on out, man. Hang. Come and hang.
Actually, I'm coming out there pretty soon. I think I'll have to send you a note, but
absolutely,
I got to make some trips to see some people, some friends I haven't seen in a while since COVID.
Good.
So it's time I venture out there.
I'll tell you what, I'll do this. You can hang with my two kids, and I'll go vacation.
Oh yeah, I'll take them to the park, feed them up, take them on a picnic. Maybe we'll put the tent in the backyard.
And you'll come home all frazzled and like, never again.
Honey, why don't we have 10 of these things?
Right. I just have to give a quick shout out to my boy, Tommy Becker. He's
happy birthday.
8 years old today, man. Cool dude, man. I'm still pushing him on his piano. We keep him up there. He plays a lot on his own, but we just make sure that he's like playing slow and executing well and keeping his head in the game. I always tell him, Tommy, excellence, not mediocrity. Go for excellence. Don't go for mediocrity.
By the way, he said he'd bring. Oops, wrong thing. I didn't mean to click the wrong thing for Ramon. I wanted to drop this because I love coffee. So you might have to save me some. Or next semester I will be there and I'll bring some amazing brilliance. So there you go. I think that's
there you go, dude.
Great way to end. I'm going to give you the last 30 seconds to go out. I'll see you after the show. Thanks to everybody. It was a wonderful Sunday morning with coffee.
Thanks to Jeffrey, man.
Oh, well, that guy,
it, dude.
He's easy. He's like a monkey. You can replace him, no problem. So thanks to everybody. Happy birthday, Tommy, and Bruce. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, man. All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining this live stream. If you want more information about what I do, just go to my website, brucebecker.com. You can find me on the usual suspects for the YouTube channel, like what we're on here today, or Instagram or Facebook. I'm not a TikTok guy. I mean, I'm just doing what I'm comfortable doing. I don't do a lot of posts. I don't want to get too redundant, but there is a value in redundancy, but I'm not going to get up there and just keep doing it and try to go like, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me. I'm here busy every day teaching a number of students per day, Monday through Friday. If you're interested, contact me. Let me know what your time zone is, and we'll see if we can work you into the schedule. And you want real results and real growth and a real bona fide path to making those changes, not quick licks, not quick fix, not this sticking, not that sticking, but readdressing how you're doing what you're doing so that it will make a major impact on your fluidity and your growth, your feel, your groove, your attention to details, and how you play. Come to me. All right, everybody. Peace. See you next.